feel the feelings. Allow yourself to feel the feelings. Now, we don't want to feel the feelings. That's the whole point. Our lizard brain is ready to protect us from feeling the feelings.
But guess what? You have maneuvered through difficult change before. So then next part of that is, okay, now let's think about times in your life where you've gone through a change that you didn't want to go through, whether you chose to do it or not, whether you said, okay, I need to make this change in my life, or life said to you, hey, guess what? This is what's happening, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, that critical voice, actually, if you can give it a job and just tell it, when I'm in the editing phase, I am going to need you really badly. So stick around, but this is not the phase for you.
Welcome to the Health Conscious Living Podcast. So, Celeste, what an honor it is to speak with you. Before we go, I'd like you to talk about Mind the Gap.
I'm so excited about this. And it's really what we do at Days for Girls. We pay attention, we listen, we invite people to come together across big divides and to consider what we have in common. And in my experience, what I've recognized is that there is actually a moment between when something happens to us and when we define what it means and we prepare to respond. Now, this moment is a heartbeat, less than a heartbeat, and our amazing brain is able to quickly make decisions without us having to concentrate every time. And when it's traumatizing, it's our amygdala that's responding with what I call our lizard brain, ready to flitter under a rock, that responds. And it always responds with negative bias, always, because that's its job, to keep us safe. And we don't recognize that. So there's two things happening when something happens. One, like menstruation, you go, oh, it's blood. This is bad, right? So we can't blame cultural decision to go bad. How do we get rid of that, right? It's a natural thing. And with our day-to-day lives, if we have an experience that's traumatizing, we store that away. And if it's especially traumatizing, it's not just a conscious thing, it's also an energy thing. It literally sears into even our DNA. So we're making sure we got this, right? So let's say you're 3 years old, you're in a crowd, your family disappears, and you're like, these strangers are there, and you're sure you are lost forever. In those moments, you're like, and your family can show up 20 seconds later, and you go, yay. But part of you now has that you're walking around with, I'm not okay. I could be abandoned at any moment. And you don't get to bring those two things together. What I know is that we actually can go consciously back to moments like that and choose to reframe them with the wisdom of right now. So for instance, in that case, for me, I actually put my hands together and open it up as if I'm opening the moment like Tai Chi. And you know how those moments actually, you can see them, you can almost smell them, the colors, they're really vibrantly. So
all of our senses.
Exactly. It's as if you're watching the movie anew every time you re-experience, right? You think about it. And you see all the things you can see. And importantly, you feel the feelings. Allow yourself to feel the feelings. Now, we don't want to feel the feelings. That's the whole point. Our lizard brain is ready to protect us from feeling the feelings.
Right, because it's fear and danger and
you're like, I don't know.
Survival. Yeah.
Exactly, Gail. So Dr. Gail, you are like programmed. We are programmed to avoid that feeling. So if you can allow yourself to go back and just feel those feelings and then bring your wisdom from right now back to, okay, what do I know about this? First, start with gratitude if you can. I'm so grateful they showed up, and hold on, little 3-year-old, actually, wait, watch this. First of all, I'm so proud of you. You were so brave. I noticed how you're looking around and trying to figure out a solution, how you're really watching. I mean, look at that observance going on with you. and then, I'm so glad they came back. They came back. They always come back. I've been so blessed with a family that cares for me so greatly. And from this wisdom and point of view, I can know that absolutely I felt completely abandoned. I felt. And I'm grateful I got to experience understanding of people who do get abandoned. I got the empathy for that. So I'm owning the empathy. I'm owning the love. I'm owning the joy. I'm owning my talents of resilience to stand there and observe instead of going into complete panic. And I'm owning that experience changed the way I see the world. And I'm taking back that energy because I don't have to have that fear. Actually, it never belonged to me. It was just that moment. I'm taking it back and close the moment. It is powerful.
Absolutely healing. It's transformative. And it's really accessing our inner wisdom that's whole and sees a greater picture. And the amygdala's there, like you said, the lizard brain to protect us. But it doesn't need to run the show. And that's what happens in those moments. So that when we can access the greater inner wisdom of who we truly are, the wholeness of spirit, we really can see that that's a memory, a moment, and it's not who I am right here, right now. And it's so empowering. So, Celeste, what 3 things would you like to share with the audience as we finish?
Thank you for asking. I would say one of the important things I would love to share is that we can't care what people think of us. What people think of us from the book, The 4 Agreements, is none of our business. And that is literal, because honestly, we often assume the wrong thing. We're often assuming from a place of, okay, now I did it. They're not even talking to me. I did something wrong, when in actuality, they didn't even see you waving, or we often assume the worst, like we've been talking about. And in truth, if we can get to that place of just compassion for others, just, I'm curious what that was about. Instead of going to deeply wounded lizard place, we can choose to be curious. We can choose to go, gee, I don't know what that was about, but I do know that in the past, I've loved being their friend. I've trusted them and loved them. It'll be interesting to see how this turns out. Keeps us in a place of building and creating instead of a place of woundedness. And even if they were trying to insult you or angry at you, it also helps you know how to communicate better and not be stuck in a place of wrestling with it. You deserve all of your energy and all of your joy, and caring what people think of us takes us away from that place and frankly robs you of true connection.
Welcome, Deb.
Thank you for having me, Gail. I'm excited to be here. That was lovely to hear your voice saying all of those things. It just reminds me to be grateful for every opportunity that I've had over the course of the last several years, but especially this past year.
Thank you. And it's so great to have you. I'm excited to talk to you today because there's so much out there in the world. And I've been reflecting on you and how you help people and how you help individuals and corporations and how you are, I like the change catalyst, because a lot of people aren't really big on change. And so what do you bring forth, and how did you get there to begin with?
When I was young and I struggled with anxiety and depression, which I've battled my entire life, I grew up in a household where there was a lot of trauma. There was also a lot of wonderful things at the same time, but there was some trauma. And when you're navigating through those, and I think this applies to also as adults, when you're navigating through difficult circumstances like that, and you feel a sense of powerlessness because there's things happening that you can't stop, sometimes we become reluctant to want to embrace change because we have so many things that are already happening to us that when a small change happens, it feels like just one more thing that we can't control. And so we start to think like, well, I don't really handle change, when really we're handling change from the moment we're born, right? We're changing from the moment that we are born every single day. So all of us are experts at change, but what is the message that we kind of tell ourselves with that? And so I can remember there was a bedspread or a blanket or something was changed on my bed. And I remember feeling like emotional about the fact that this blanket was changed, right? And you think, well, that's silly. It's a blanket. But I think for me as a child, like all of these things are happening that I don't have any influence over. And this is, I don't want this blanket changed. And so that's like an early memory that I have that kind of ties in then throughout my life of that moment of having to realize, well, this is just a blanket and ultimately it's going to be okay. Right. And so when you start to adapt to that notion that you're going to have to go through these circumstances, it doesn't mean that you're going to be happy about the circumstances. It doesn't mean that they're always going to be easy, but that we can approach them with that notion of, okay, this is going to be okay. Not sure how, but it's going to be okay. And so in dealing with anxiety and depression, that mindset became really critical because when you're in those dark periods, if you've been in it and out of it, you really need to remind yourself that there is going to be something on the other side of it when you can't feel it, which is really hard. Right. When you're in those dark places and you can't feel it. And that strengthening of my ability to kind of develop, whether you would say mindset, I think a little bit of it's mindset, some of it almost becomes habit that you learn how to move forward through that and would share with other people how I was maneuvering through that. And they would find things that I was suggesting that I was doing for myself as helpful for them. And so then I just started sharing more openly about it. And so even when it wasn't as normal, I think, for people to talk about mental illness and mental health stuff, I was speaking about it, right? So it would almost be like people be like, oh, you're going to admit to that, you're going to acknowledge that, you're going to tell people that. And I just thought, yeah, why not? Like it's part of my story. And when I share about it, I can see other people feeling healing from that. And that has then carried over into my professional stuff. So it's incredible to me. And I think listening to you read the bio, the way that you did, right? The phrases that you picked, it's incredible to me the way this very fragile child, fragile and strong at the same time, who is experiencing all these really difficult circumstances, how my way of maneuvering through that stuff as a child has translated into what I'm able to now do with something like a corporation that's going through a difficult change. And, you asked, like, how did you get there and what do you do? And I think that's what it was. I took the experiences that I'd had and I thought, like, what were some of the things that worked for me that could potentially work for others? And you apply that and you listen and you engage in deep conversation because things that I used may not work for somebody else. So I need to meet them where they are and hear what their experience is. So that's kind of the big picture. I could go into some more individual stories, but I want to give you a chance to respond or question any of that I just said.
Well, no, I mean, I love it because as children growing up, it is, very difficult from time to time, especially when we don't have guides and people to hold our hand or talk to us. But that lesson about this too shall pass. This is going to be different. You will come through this and you start to really tap into that resilience. And that's what it sounds like you were able to really tap into that and make it through to the next day, the next phase, the next, there is light at the end of the tunnel. And, in business and in corporation, we're constantly dealing with stress, right? There's always stress. There's always some issue to deal with. And to be able to have somebody like you come along and say, what's really happening here and how you can tell us how you take that information. So you're listening because you're meeting them where they are, which is of course essential. And that how does that listening change the communication and the collaboration and the attitude in that setting?
Yeah, so there's a great story I have that I use across whether I'm talking about mental health or talking about corporate change. Is at some point in my life, I want to say I was I believe it was in my 20s, and I had struggled with anxiety and depression my entire life. And we've come a long way in terms of how much we speak about it. But when I was a kid and going through it, a lot of times people would use phrases like, oh, she's very sensitive, or, oh, she's an emotional person, right? There wasn't the awareness that there was something bigger going on. And so you fast forward to the period at which I'm in my 20s, I was going through one of my worst kind of depressive episodes and trying to figure out, like, what is happening? Why does this keep happening? And how can I address it? And came across an article that somebody had written where they were talking about their anxiety and their depression. And they used a phrase, grotesque horror. And I understood it. And I was like, that's me. And the validation that I felt, because like, that's what I'm feeling. Right. So I wasn't saying like, no, I'm fine. Everything's going to be okay. I'm just going to get past this. I was owning it. I was naming it. I was saying, that is what I'm feeling. And I felt very empowered by that moment. And that's what I want to bring to people, whether I'm working with them as an individual coach, whether I'm working with them as an individual coach or whether I'm working as a company, is that the validation of the feelings of frustration, sadness, anger, fear, etc., that we tend to think of as negative emotions, which you don't want to root yourself in them, right? You don't want to, if you're stressed out about something, you don't want to just sit and be like, I'm just going to sit and be stressed out. But you need to acknowledge it to get past it. I felt healing before anything else happened. I felt healing from finding the words that described what I was feeling. So when I'm working with people, and you noted listening, right? I ask people, what are you worried about? Right? Like if we're doing some type of software implementation and people are not happy about the software implementation, the goal is not to just say, we're doing this and you better just learn how to deal with it because this is what's happening. In order to get people to be part of the process, you want to understand where their reservations and their concerns are. So I like to have people like, I'll journal. I'll say, I want you to write down right now everything that you're worried about happening. What are all of your negative associations with this process? And that works across change, whether that's a personal change, whether that's a corporate change. What are the concerns that you have? And when you own them and you acknowledge them and you give them words, you take away the control that this is something that's, I'm going to push it aside. This is something that shouldn't be happening. And you say, no, this is normal. This is natural. But guess what? You have maneuvered through difficult change before. So then next part of that is, okay, now let's think about times in your life where you've gone through a change that you didn't want to go through, whether you chose to do it or not, whether you said, okay, I need to make this change in my life, or life said to you, hey, guess what? This is what's happening, whether you like it or not. You had to maneuver through that. What were the things you did? What were the actual strategies you used? What were some of the words you told yourself? Was there somebody that you talked to? And then you can apply some of those same strategies that you've already used, because we've all overcome things that we didn't really want to have to confront, and you can apply them to that thing. So it's giving it the reality and then talking through and breaking down what are the actual steps we're going to take, so that rather than trying to like circumvent the resistance, we do what I call hug the resistance. Let's get down there. Let's talk to that resistance. Let's figure out where it's coming from, and then we can work through it.
And today, my special guest is Lisa Tenner. Lisa is an award-winning author, book writing and publishing coach, and speaker. Lisa is known for helping writers easily access creative flow, free their voice, and bring forth their best work. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you, Gail. It's so great to be here with you.
It is. Tell us about the breath and why the breath is so important in writing.
Well, deep breathing relaxes us. And when we're relaxed, it's much easier to enter a flow state, right? If our body's tense, and of course we're sitting at computers all day long, and just, I think a lot of times just doing things that create tension in the body. So breathing and the movement both really help free up that tension and relax. Deep breathing relaxes the whole central nervous system. And when we're relaxed, science tells us that creativity flows more easily, that it helps us access our creativity.
And I experienced it that it also brought cortisol down, that stress hormone. It just really helps to relax and center and be present. And one of the other things that I absolutely love about the book is how it brings spirit, body, mind, movement, and actual manifestation together, because you're connecting, you're breathing, and you're clearing, and you're bringing in more creativity that actually you can do something that actually has a product. One of the fun exercises that I did was the breath of joy. And then having that conversation between the breath of joy and the doubt. It's like doubt is here, and then the breath of joy comes in, and they have this conversation, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, so doubt gets to go take a nap now. and joy gets to come in.
I love that. Yeah, you know, that critical voice, actually, if you can give it a job and just tell it, when I'm in the editing phase, I am going to need you really badly. So stick around, but this is not the phase for you. And sometimes that helps too. It's sort of just to ease that part of ourselves that feels they have to protect us, right?
Mm-hmm. As we start to close, what 3 things would you like to leave the audience with?
Well, one I would say is breathe. Breathe from deep in your belly, as we call it in Qigong, lower dantian, but it's like 3 fingers below your belly button. That's lower dantian. And that's such an important energy center. And I was always a very shallow breather, breathing in my chest, and breathing my belly transformed my life. So I would say breathe and write, because writing is so healing for the soul, but it also is a way to express what's deep inside of you. And you don't have to share all of it, but you may find that sharing some of it is both powerful for you and powerful for those who read it. And the third, I think I'm going to share something from my teacher, Robert Peng. He always says, easy, relax, smile. And I think that's so beautiful. It's so simple, but I hope that also is a message that comes across. Like, it can be easy, just relax, smile.
I can't wait to have this book to gift to others. Where can people find the book? Where can they get it?
They can get it on Amazon. It will soon be available at other online retailers, but I'd say go to Amazon. It's there now. And yeah, I do think it's a wonderful gift to yourself and a wonderful gift to both writers in your life or anybody who wants to write or you think needs to write, any of that.
And thank you for being here today and sharing this with us, and for writing your book. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gail.
Thank you for watching. If you would like to work with me for more insight, go to my website and book a private session. And check out my latest transformational meditation. Have a blessed day.